What is up, everybody? It is Wednesday, February 15th, day after Valentine's Day. Hope everybody had a Valentine's Day if you were celebrating. I'm here. I think this is the third live stream we've tried in the last 3 weeks. So I've had a pretty good response, pretty good audience the last few weeks. So wanted to keep it going. We're streaming in Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and IG. Haven't figured out TikTok quite yet, but I think this should do. I think most of our audience is on one of those platforms. So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them in the chat. Here we go. So I think are we live on IG, Amir? Did we get up there or no? Does it look like it's working? I'm looking right now. Oh yeah, it's working. Cool. So, all right. Zach Mohammed says, how are you doing genuinely? Honestly, pretty tough couple weeks. Personally, with my kids, my 5-year-old is not loving kindergarten right now. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a rough couple weeks, but managed to get him on time to school, but he wouldn't let me go. So that was a rough morning. So how am I doing genuinely? I'm hanging in there. Business is good. The community is strong as ever. So that's keeping me positive. Let's start with the questions here. We got one from Cricket Man. I love the name. Cricket Man 1. Asking me, what do you think of restructuring firms like Albers and Marshall, and are the exit opportunities good? This is one I can actually speak to. I worked in restructuring at Rothschild, for those of you that don't know, back in 2002-04. Restructuring is basically advising distressed companies, so helping them when they're either going into bankruptcy or already in bankruptcy, negotiating with their creditors, or if you're on the debtor side, negotiating for the creditors against the company to try to recover as much of the capital as possible when you have mistakenly lent money to a company that is now unable to pay. For restructuring, Albers and Marshall is one of the, sorry, I keep calling it Marshall. It's one of the better firms in restructuring. I'm not sure if they do more debtor or creditor work. I'll say some strong restructuring shops are like Houlihan, Lazard, Rothschild has a strong practice, and probably Evercore, I think, has a strong practice in restructuring. But yeah, it definitely has some great exit opportunities. It's a little bit more niche-y, but it's kind of respected in the sense of you get a lot of experience around capital structures and complex debt instruments. So the modeling tends to be very complex and heavy. You have to model like these cash sweeps and these crazy, so many different types of scenarios, the 13-week cash flow, what would happen, all these conversions from equity, from debt to equity. So it creates these kind of monster models, which I think people respect. So typical exits from restructuring tend to be working at a distressed hedge fund, a credit hedge fund is pretty common, or distressed or credit private equity fund. Although there's nothing stopping you also going from traditional private equity if that's what you want to do. I made that transition, and this was before I really knew anything. I didn't even know what private equity was when I started banking. So it should give all of you a lot of hope. Let's see what else we got. Oh, we got a good crew on IG here. Hey, Dollar Vora, Satel, my name's Zuzu. I'm looking over here. Sorry, because my IG live is over here. Let's see what we got. Here we go. What's actually the best thing for a second semester freshman to be doing right now when prepping for next year in IB recruiting? Hey, Connor, welcome to the stream. I would say the best thing you could be doing is, trying to, number one, make sure you have an internship, something somewhat related to finance for the summer, even if it's like, volunteering as much as you can, doing like any sort of finance work or research work or anything like that. Number two would probably be start reaching out to people in the industry, alums, let them know that you're interested, and start trying to figure out, start just trying to develop those relationships so that when recruiting comes around, you're more likely to actually get an interview. So as a second semester freshman, you want to make sure your CV, your resume's completely buttoned up, ready to go. Number one. Number two, you want to make sure that you're actually, getting ready for interviews. But I'd say the interview prep is a little bit later. You really should just be trying to get on phone calls, doing informational interviews. And before you do that, you should kind of be making sure that you have a little bit of practice. You kind of know what specific firms you're interested in, what specific groups, what investment banking actually is, so you don't sound like completely clueless when you get on those calls. Hey, no worry, man. No worry, Cricket Man. Let's see. Let me get some coffee. I'm struggling today. This is interesting. Sanjit asks, after the venture capital master course, what would be the next step to move closer to getting a position in venture capital? I'm from the Bay Area, if that makes a difference. Hey, Sanjit, good question. So we do have a venture capital master package. It includes the VC course and I think the Excel modeling course. That's a good first step to make yourself dangerous and make yourself understand how firms do diligence and stuff like that. It also has a little bit of a growth equity tilt to it. We are adding a new module to this course called a sourcing module, which is actually, I think, really, really valuable, because one of the ways to make yourself more valuable to potential and to landing a VC position is to really integrate yourself with the startup community. So that means, knowing a lot of the founders in the accelerator the top accelerator programs, going to events, and trying to just add value wherever you can. It's very, very hard to get a position in VC right out of, if you're super young, but it's something that if you can talk the talk, if you're really good at networking and you have a good network of startup founders that are impressive, I think then firms are going to be a little bit more open and interested in speaking with you. And I think also just trying to figure out what your niche is. I think in the US, especially in the Bay Area, there's enough startups in this ecosystem where you can actually be a little bit more specific around what interests you and kind of specialize in that and have really deeper domain expertise in that specific niche. So I would consider, trying to brand yourself in a way. So not just saying, oh, I want to be in VC, any VC, whatever, but actually maybe writing some articles online around specific types of VC. So if it's SaaS, for example, giving your thoughts on SaaS businesses and the trends you're seeing in the industry and whatnot. So I know that's hard to kind of form your own thesis and stuff, but it's kind of what's expected if you're going to be in the industry. But I would highly suggest if you have our venture capital course, I'd highly suggest checking out the sourcing module. Once it goes live, that should be within a few weeks into the course. We're adding that in there, and it's no extra cost to you if you already have the course. So I would definitely check that out, because it kind of gives you a sense of how to network with founders and be able to kind of build those relationships. All right, let's see here. Do you need a JD to get into restructuring? No, you do not need a JD if you're talking about restructuring for investment banking. I think it is valued in that specific group in the sense of it gives you a little bit more knowledge around contracts and the specifics around debt instruments and how credit docs are written, but it's not something that's absolutely required. People are hiring into restructuring without the JD all the time. So that's a big investment for, that's a very big investment for, if you're trying to get into IB restructuring, you shouldn't be going to JD. JD MBA, maybe a little bit better fit for that. So let's see what else we got. Here we go. This is always a very common question. So from Instagram, Mr. Z Chen, do you have some tips on switching desks? I'm trying to move away from munis into something like real estate, investment banking, or full M&A coverage. Yeah, so I do have lots of tips on doing internal switches. First off, it's incredibly delicate and tough to do. So if you're actually want to pull it off, you probably need to make sure that first your manager is a big fan of you and is supportive. If they're not supportive and they're a little bit more possessive, you need to be very, very careful, because you can lose your job. So especially in times like this. So I think what you want to first get a feel is has your manager been supportive of previous employees making those similar internal moves? If they have, then you can kind of approach it with a little bit more confidence. Number one. Number two, try to figure out how common it is for internal lateral. So even speaking to somebody in HR might be good. Again, making sure that probably better to speak to people you trust first before kind of just going straight to your manager and hoping that they don't take it the wrong way. So the worst case scenario here is you're already a low performer or mediocre performer in your group, and you say you want to switch. The manager's not going to give you a glowing reference to whatever group you want to jump. And that's why it's sometimes almost easier to make that lateral jump externally than it is internally. But people do it. And there are firms that like kind of pride themselves on allowing that internal mobility. So it just kind of depends what firm you're at, and depends how much how much they support that and how long you've been at your seat. So if you just started at munis like 6 months ago or 8 months ago, I would kind of stick it out for that 1 year, and then maybe at like month 10, 11, start kind of talking to your manager. But I wouldn't do that until you put in a little bit of groundwork, networking with some of the people from the other groups that you do want to transition into to see, are there even any seats available? Have they ever brought in anybody from another group? Let's see. We got another question from IG. Jason Crespo, what's up, man? What stands out to recruiters when looking for interns? Really experience is number one. So like, do you have good internships? Are they relevant? Number two, I see a lot of intern resumes are just either super blank and like really empty, or they're like packed into like, there's like 2 pages. So you have like, it's very rare to see an intern resume that's actually really polished. We do see them from time to time, but one that's really polished in terms of like space, the amount of white space, the experiences that stand out. And then obviously GPA is going to matter. So GPA, being involved in the clubs, taking leadership positions, I'd say rather than being like in 20 different clubs, showing that you're a leader in 1 to 2 clubs and really involved more deeply in something, I think probably has more value than trying to just, fill your resume with a bunch of different things. Let's see what else we got going on here. Wow, a lot of questions coming in from this is great. Pizarro 35, how many bananas do I need to get a t-shirt? Actually, we usually give t-shirts for free, and sometimes we have like promotions going on where if like you help us out and you do like a review, we'll send t-shirts out and stuff like that. We actually have a survey coming up. Maybe we can send the survey out actually right now. Amir, there's a survey in our Slack channel for like courses that we're looking to develop. I'd send that out in the chat. Maybe people can start voting, and for every 10 votes there, we choose somebody to send a t-shirt out to. So as a way to say thanks, we're collecting data on like the new courses we're looking to develop for all of you. So if you fill that out, there's a chance to win a shirt. Connor asks, does Wall Street Oasis offer one-on-one CV and resume building tips mentor-wise? Yeah, so Connor, we have a resume editing service. So you would work one-to-one with a mentor or somebody who works on Wall Street in investment banking, and you can choose that person through our mentor network, or you can just purchase it and we can match you up based on your background. But yeah, there's kind of 2 services. So the mentor service is like usually used for mock interviews or career consultations. That's like when usually people are using that more like when they have an interview and they want to like get a realistic mock interview, not just do it with their friends. And the second thing is, the more resume building, CV editing is the resume review service. And you can see that on Wall Street Oasis at the top menu. If you go under, I think it's careers. If you hover over that menu up at the top there, you should see it on the, I don't even remember. I'm like looking right now. Let's see here. Career. Yeah. Under career, there's WSO resume review and then mock interviews right there. So the mock interviews will bring you to, there's over 1,000 mentors in the database. So you can search by a whole bunch of different things. And there's for college kids who are a little more price sensitive, there are mentors who've priced themselves really low because they're either new or they like doing this. And so there's like some mentors I think you can get on the phone for like 30 minutes for like $30 or $40 or something, pretty low, pretty price effective. That's a service we offer. We don't really make much on that, but we do it because when people use it, they usually rave about it because you're getting like one-on-one advice. So it's pretty impactful. So yeah, here's the survey link. I don't know if people can copy and grab that, but anyways, let's see what else we got. Clay asks, do you have any advice for someone joining a small corporate development team for people coming from a non-IB background with only 7 months of corp dev experience in a rotational program, i.e. modeling courses? Yeah, Clay, if you're a little bit like, concerned about your modeling skills, definitely would recommend the Wall Street Oasis Elite Modeling Package. It has kind of the 6 core modeling courses that kind of IB professionals would be trained on. So we train at investment banks, and this is what we put a lot of the interns and the analysts through. So it has Excel modeling. So it's just making sure you understand how to play the instrument properly first, because a lot of people, they get bad, they learn bad habits. They're grabbing the mouse, and it's just, once you use Excel the wrong way for like 6 months, it's really hard to train yourself to stop reaching for that mouse and start using the quick keys. So we have time benchmarks in that Excel modeling course. It's kind of a pretty unique way to make sure you're not just able to do a pivot table or an index match, but you're actually able to do it in a time frame that would be expected of somebody that's a high caliber performer in like investment bank, for example. So this Excel modeling course, financial statement modeling course, linking the 3 statements basically together, making sure you understand how to do that. And then under the evaluation umbrella, we have the discounted cash flow modeling course and the valuation modeling, which is more trading comps and precedent transactions, which for corp dev, I think is going to be pretty important for you to be able to, look at potential other acquisitions that have happened in the past in the same industry, and or looking at trading comps, see what they're trading at, and being able to back into like a reasonable valuation. And then, of course, there's the M&A course, M&A modeling and the LBO modeling, which are a little more advanced. But I think if you started with those first 4 that I mentioned, I think that would be a great place to start. And that's not like, they're not crazy. Like it's not something where it takes you months and months. It's about, for those first 4, you could probably do them in about 30 hours if you have a little bit of background in corp dev. But yeah, that's what I'd recommend. Let's see what else we got here. Some questions from Paris. I'm trying to pick questions where I can actually help. Jack Williams from YouTube says, I'm trying to choose between 2 firms. One is an upper middle market FIG. The other is a middle market healthcare, biotech, medtech, life sciences. I'm thinking about laterally to generalist PE opportunities. I think when you say upper middle market FIG and middle market healthcare, I think you're talking specific PE funds. I think that's actually an easy answer. I would take the middle market healthcare one. If you're looking to lateral to generalist PE opportunities eventually, FIG is just a little bit, it's obviously much more niche. And if you brand yourself there, I mean, the financial statements of financial institutions is so different, and the analysis of those businesses is so different that it kind of pigeonholes you a little bit more. So I would definitely lean towards the healthcare, middle market healthcare business. It's a little bit more, it's a little bit more generalist-y, although biotech obviously has its own nuances as well. And there's, you may be facing some more like pre-revenue and research and pre-FDA type weird issues. Although I think you're referring to private equity here when you're from this question, but that's what I'd suggest. I'd probably lean towards the middle market. This is a good question. Nicholas Brand says, is a buy-side internship a good way to get into investment banking full-time? I think it is. I don't think you should shy away from this. I think the best internship to get into banking full-time is a banking internship. But if you were to say, for example, you weren't able to land that, or you wanted, like, let's say your sophomore summer, you got a buy-side internship at a small private equity fund, I think that's looked at positively because you're at least in finance, you're analyzing financial statements, you're analyzing companies, so it's relevant. So I'd put banking number 1, obviously, to get a banking full-time role. But then, yeah, right below that, I'd say buy-side internship. The only thing I'd say be careful about is, let's say you have this like buy-side internship on your CV, on your resume, but then you also have like president of the buy-side club, private equity this, private equity that. You're immediately going to be tagged as like, oh, this kid doesn't even really want investment banking. They're just gung-ho about private equity and the buy side. You got to be a little bit careful about like over branding yourself for that, because of course it is a concern. Banks want to hang on to you for at least a couple of years. if they feel like you're just going to fly to the buy side as soon as you have any sort of offer, it may make them a little bit more wary to give you an offer in the first place. So let's see what else we got. We have some great questions. I can't tell how many people are on LinkedIn right now. Or I should probably open LinkedIn on the side, but it's tough to see here. What else we got? Here we go. Satwik wants to know, what's the advice for the middle office folks to break into the front office? Hey, Sadwick, couple different avenues, couple different ways you can go. The expensive one is getting an MBA from a top, ideally a top 10, 15 school, ideally top 7, the highest you can get ranked, because the banks tend to pull most of their associate classes from the top 7. But there are people hired out of like the 20th ranked MBA program, whatever. So that's an expensive way, but more of a surefire way to get actual interviews if you're in on-campus recruiting. It kind of gives you that shot. The other way is obviously networking internally to try and make that internal transfer that we discussed earlier in the stream. So again, that's a much touchier, harder thing to do. It also depends, like, do you have the skills for front office? Are you trying to join as a first-year analyst? All these questions. So like, and are you networking with people in the front office? Do they like you? Do your middle office managers really, are you a high performer? Are you, going above and beyond? Are they going to be able to put in a good word for you? So I think if you're at a firm that kind of supports that internal transferring, I think it's going to be important that you develop relationships with people in the front office and try to get into those actual recruiting processes. And then once you are there, you have to be ready to really knock it out of the park, because you're gonna be like, well, why would we, choose you over all these other Ivy League kids with 3.8s and 3.9s, or even the non-targets that are super hardos and have been like dreaming of going into banking for 6-7 years. So I think that's what makes it a real uphill battle, is they already have so many applicants to fill so few seats. It has to be about who you know. And so if you're not able to do it internally because it's a little touchy politically, then you can look to try and do it externally, but it's going to be a really important networking game. It's going to be important to show your knowledge. It's going to be important to show your passion. It's going to be important not to give up and reach out and speak with as many people as possible. I think what people don't really fully appreciate, and people are like, I hate networking. Well, it's basically you're saying like, I don't like meeting people. I don't like developing relationships. So that's how you should be seeing networking. Networking isn't like a transaction where you're like, hey, I'm going to give you this, or I'm going to give you that. I'm just going to reach out to you and ask you dumb questions that are I don't really care about, just to make a connection with you. It's actually you should be having a genuine interest in what these people do. If you have a genuine interest in what they do and you can communicate that and your knowledge about the industry, they're going to have a positive impression about you. And then so when a job opens up, that's when you're going to hear about it, especially if you're staying in touch with them, every 6 months, pinging them, say, hey, just thought this would be interesting based on the deals you're working on, hope all is well. Little things like that to kind of keep you top of mind is really what people who are good at building relationships are doing. So, networking has kind of a bad connotation to it because it feels a little bit like, oh, I'm networking. But the point is, like, who you know is what's going to determine the opportunities that are placed in front of you. And then your knowledge base and your interview skills and all that other stuff comes into play. But the simple fact of you going out there and meeting people and talking about the industry and doing the financial modeling training and doing all that stuff, that's like actually developing your interview skills as well. So you can think of it as like not just networking, but you're actually you're developing probably the most important skill in your entire career, which is, making friends and developing relationships. So think of it that way. And I think if you frame it like that, it's not about like, hey, I'm trying to get a quick transaction and make this one transition. Because even if you get to the front office, Satwick, that doesn't mean you're going to be successful there. It doesn't mean you're not going to hate it in 12 months and want to get out. So wherever you go in your life, whatever you do in your career, you're going to have relationships and get good at that if you want to move up. So I would heavily, like, strongly advise that everyone focuses on that skill. It's really the most important skill. So, and don't look at the short term. Think of it as a long game. It may take you 2-3 years to do that transition, But the point is, like, do you get there or not? Doesn't really matter how long it takes. Well, I guess it does matter. If it's like 10 years, then yeah, it's too long. But that's what I would suggest. I think it's not easy to go middle office, front office, especially in a market like now where people are getting laid off and there's kind of an excess pool of people, front office people already just like looking for jobs anyways. So you have to kind of think about that. Like, why would the firm hire me when there's people already with front office experience that are looking for a job? So, and some of them really good. See what else we got here. Oh, okay. So Jack's follow up on his question. KBW depositories versus Canaccord Genuity Healthcare, thinking about PE exit ops and don't want to get pigeonholed in FIG. Yeah, I would go Canaccord then. Yeah, I wouldn't focus on deal size. The deal flow is actually pretty important, but deal size doesn't really matter as much. The experience matters more, and pigeonholing yourself into FIG, unless you want to stay in FIG. There are private equity funds out there, believe it or not, that specialize in FIG. So if you do want to do that, I know there's one out in San Diego. I'm friends with one of the partners there. He's always looking for associates. So like, what I'd say is like, sometimes pigeonholing yourself sounds bad, but like if you're really good in that small pond, you can do really well for yourself, because there are buy side firms that specialize in that. So if you are not looking for that this early in your career, which totally understandable, I wouldn't get lured away by the deal size. Now, if Canaccord, and I don't know about their healthcare arm, but if they're not doing many deals at all, and you're not going to get any deal reps, then it is a little bit risky. But obviously, it gives you a lot more flexibility, I think, going to Canaccord. Let's see what's going on here. This is great. Kevin asked, how do you explain job hopping in interviews when it has been due to bad company culture? Manager, I love this question. So, job hopping, how many job hops are we talking about, Kevin? We're talking about like one, I don't think it's a big deal. If you're talking about 2 or 3, even worse. Hopping meaning under, say, 6 months, 9 months. If it's over a year, then I think it's a little bit more understandable. But even like a year, if you've done 3 in a row where you've only been in a place for a year, I think it starts to look pretty bad on you, no matter if you've just been unlucky. That's why I always say, like, each decision you make in terms of like what your next role is actually really important, because if it's a wrong decision, you can't, yes, you can move on, but it's just going to be harder to move on, especially fast. So it's important to do your research, your diligence with people who formerly worked there, not just the people who are currently there who are going to say nice things because they kind of have to say nice things. It's important to really talk to people before you make that jump, so that you're not in this situation where you're getting this question in interviews. If you're getting this question in interviews, it probably means you've been at least had 2 short stints somewhere. If it's only 1 bad stint, I think it's fine to say, culturally it wasn't a great fit. I'm looking for a place where I can grow, and there's respect, there's mutual respect there. I think I'm ready to work very long hours. Show that you're ready to work hard. I'd say it kind of depends what was bad about it. I had, when I was fired from private equity, I had kind of this similar question, like what happened there, and I think I was able to say, it was just cultural fit. I think if you talk to anybody from my previous firm, they'd be happy to vouch for me that I'm a very hard worker, all this stuff. So it helps to be able to kind of lean on the experience or the relationships are going to vouch for you as a good worker. So rather than kind of focusing on the company that maybe where it didn't work out or your relationships aren't as strong, I would try to kind of twist the question and point it back at the relationships that you do have and in the track record that you do have. Now, if you just graduated and you've gone hop, it's definitely doesn't look good. It doesn't look good on you. It means you haven't been able to stick around anywhere. And it's something that's definitely a risk to you. And it's going to make it harder and harder for you to get a job, because people are just going to see you as a flight risk, which, to be honest, if you're not sticking around, that's kind of what you are. And it may not be fair. Maybe you got unlucky and you ended up at like 2 or 3 different places that all have bad cultures. But it also means that Maybe you're not as adaptable. So like that's why you're getting this question. It's like, are you a flight risk? And so if you can assure them that, number one, you're really passionate about the industry. Number two, you know exactly what it's like to work at their firm, what their firm's all about, their culture, and you think it's a great fit, then I think it's a way to turn a potentially negative question into a positive of why you're sure about them and that specific firm or that specific group. So then it shows you've done it's a way to kind of twist it and show that you've done your research about them and and yeah, turn it into a positive and turn it into a strength. See what else we got here. All right, here we go. DJ Bad Debt Expense asks, how to transition back into finance via investor relations. I started my career in valuations for 2 years. Now I work at a PR paid media agency. Okay, I'm looking to make a move within the next 6 months. Is it even a feasible transition? There isn't relative to that material on WSO. I'm networking calls, cold emails. Hey DJ, so if you were starting in valuation and you had a couple of years of experience, I think, yeah, I don't see if you find the right people in valuation, and you tell them, hey, you're looking to get back, I don't think that's, I don't know why they wouldn't take you. I don't think you're going to get credit for your work in PR media agency. I also don't know how long you've been in the PR media agency, but my guess is like, as long as you show that you have some of the skills and you're willing to come back after, like as a third year in valuation, then I don't see why not. It sounds like is it even feasible? Yeah, it's absolutely feasible. If you have the skill set and you did 2 years of it, as long as you haven't been like in PR media for like 4 or 5 years, like if it's just been a couple of years here, 1 year in PR media, and you want to go back, I think now's the time to do it before those skills kind of get more stale. It sounds like you're networking, doing calls and cold emails. That's good. Are you doing coffee chats? Are you getting in touch with people? Are you actually getting on calls? Are there any roles actually available? Have you looked at specific shops that just do valuation and fairness opinions and stuff like that? That might be a little bit less competitive than like an investment bank. That's a good way. And these shops, they're usually looking for people who have that 2 years experience. I'd be shocked if like you wouldn't be able to get a look having the 2 years experience, because you're still relatively cheap compared to somebody who's like 5 years out of school or 5 years of valuation experience. And number two, you're probably pretty efficient assuming you were good at your job. Let's see what we got. See what else we got. Can I use personal projects I've worked on, fundraising in my CV cover letter? Absolutely. In terms of what to put on a CV and cover letter, I think you should just be focused on what's the most impressive. What's the one that shows you're the, what's the one that shows the most impressive trajectory or the impact that you personally made, rather than it just being like the biggest name or whatnot. You can absolutely use personal projects. I would just be careful if it's like, let's say you're trading Pokemon cards or something. I don't know, like you don't want your whole CV to be about Pokemon cards and like all that stuff. Like if it's a 1 or 2 lines to help fill out the CV, I think it helps create discussions. And I think that's where the interest section at the bottom of the resume is actually much more important than people give it credit. Is helps the interviewer quickly kind of create conversation. And sometimes ideally you want an interview to be like half or more than half of the interview, not to be technicals, but to be more about discussions about things you share in common. So, all right, DJ Bad Experience came back. He said that PR only for 1 year. Is investor relations a more technical role? No, it's not a more technical role, but you need that technical background. If you only went PR 1 year, I would think you get back into valuations for sure. IR depends on what specific fund you're going for investor relations, or what specific firm for investor relations. But yeah. Daniel Smith, we're getting a lot of YouTubers. Thanks for joining, guys. Why are the reasons one might pursue an MBA? I got an MBA. I got it. I think it's an expensive insurance policy for me. So first reason I think is just network and being around really sharp people who are eventually going to be leaders in their industry. Give you an example of the guys. I was sitting next to the founder of Warby Parker and founders of Harry's, like in my marketing class, which is crazy. Shout out to those guys. But that's an example of the caliber of people you're around, just super sharp. So you're going to be learning a lot from them, hearing about their experiences from their backgrounds in business. And so you learn a lot there. You develop a really strong network. I wouldn't pursue the MBA as a purely academic endeavor where you're like thinking you're going to come out as a wizard in business. I think you learn a lot more when you're boots on the ground, operating a business, or investing in businesses. So that's what I would say. MBA, that's the primary reason. And so like another good reason to pursue an MBA is if you have a very defined transition you want to make in your career. So for example, let's say you've been in corporate dev, or you've been in corporate finance and you want to make a transition to investment banking. That's a great example, or management consulting, for example. That's a great time to use an MBA especially if you're not getting a lot of traction, with your own networking for whatever reason, because you don't have the right background. The MBA kind of allows for a reset. That's why I always suggest not to go get an MBA right after undergrad. I always say, go work for a few years so you can kind of try to get a better sense of what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, so that if you need the MBA, it can be used as a reset to pivot to another career. I think that's where it adds a lot of value, because you are getting that on-campus recruiting again. Or maybe for the first time, if you went to non-target, you're finally getting, maybe you're upskilling on, maybe you went to a non-target and you're able to get into a really strong business school or brand that you can put on your CV. Helps get a little more credibility, helps recruit. It'll up your application to interview rate significantly down the road. So those are the reasons not to get it. It's expensive, huge opportunity costs. And if you're not really sure what you want to do after, or you have delusions around what the MBA is going to do, like, oh, you've never had private equity experience, you think you're going to go get an MBA at a top school and get into private equity, it's just not going to happen, or unlikely to happen, I should say. So yeah, that's what I'd say. It's those are the reasons for and against. And I think there was a really good discussion on Wall Street Oasis. Comp Banker, one of our top members over the years, he went and got an MBA, and he had a long post about why to get an MBA. We'll try to, Amir, maybe you can try to find that. It's Comp Banker, CompBanker, where he wrote a whole post on like why he went and pursued the MBA when he struggled with that like cost benefit analysis as well. That's a good question.
Sure.
Hey Ganesh, how are you? I'm good. Would self-projects and data visualization analytics work be important on a CV for banking? Depends on what else you have, Connor. I think it doesn't hurt to have some of that, because it shows that you're comfortable around data analytics, which is kind of an important part of banking, is being able to visualize data and understanding analytics. So I think it absolutely could help strengthen your resume. Just make sure again, the CV isn't branded as a data analyst, or if you're not applying for like a data visualization business intelligence analyst role, then you don't want that to be like half your resume. So just make sure it's give it appropriate space and appropriate emphasis. All right, what else we got? So should I sharpen my modeling skills? Thank you, DJ Behedet. If you're going for IR, maybe a little bit, not really. But if you're going for banking, yes, I think you should sharpen your modeling skills and your value. I think you have 2 years of valuation experience. So I don't think the valuation modeling courses would be that new to you, unless you were doing, I assume you're doing like trading comps and precedent transactions and all that stuff. But if not, that might be interesting to you. But maybe more the financial statement modeling, maybe more the accounting foundations course, and the Excel modeling might be great for you. Hey Ryan, this is awesome. I'm glad I followed this account. I used to go to Wall Street Oasis in 2012. What's up, Ryan? Yeah, a lot of nostalgia. I got the gray hair to show for it. It's funny when I get on sales calls with investment bankers for financial modeling training in office, a lot of them are like, I used to be on the forum back in 2008. So it's always funny to see. But yeah. Let's see. General thoughts on getting the JD MBA. Hey, Keith Lee. I think if you're really interested in law, I think it's definitely impressive. Number one. Number two, great if you're going into something like restructuring or not, but I don't think it's necessary. It's more of like, it's giving you an interesting backdrop for both hard skills on the JD side around contracts and whatnot. And then on the MBA side, obviously the network to back it up. So I think it can be helpful, especially if you want to go become an operator and run your own business eventually, to have kind of a more multivariate skill set. But it can be expensive too. So better for you to know kind of what the purpose is before going and spending that money. Cause it's obviously, I think people do it in 3 years. Usually they kind of squeeze in the MBA in 1 year with the JD. But anyways, Connor, good question. How could stock from LinkedIn, and we're going to end it soon, but how could stock research be implemented on a CV? So Connor, I think it depends how deep your research is. So if like you've done specific industry, I would name names. The problem is you got to make sure you're ready to talk about those names. So if you said, looked at fundamental research on, the EV industry, including analysis of, GM, Tesla, Rivian, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You should be ready to talk about those in detail in the interviews. So I would put it on your CV if you feel really comfortable about it. But like any line on your resume, you have to be able to back it up with stories, with facts, with numbers, with data. So you just got to be ready to go. But it can be implemented. It can be implemented under. There's like different sections, right? So you have typically work experience first. So you have, or your schools. If you're an undergrad, you look like you're an undergrad. You look pretty young. So like school experience first, right? Where you have your schools. Then you do work experience. After that, you typically have like a section for leadership. So if the stock research was done as part of a club or whatever, you could put it there. If not, you could have it under experience, but I'd have it kind of at the bottom, or you could have it under like interest section. You could have like a thing that looks just like the work experience, but you could have something like a fundamental stock research, this date to that date. And then you could have something along like the specific industries you looked into or the specific names, and then, what your recommendation was, or specifically, what you were doing in the, percentage upside, downside cases you presented. I think that would be interesting, and it would probably lead to a lot of conversations in the interviews, which could be a good thing if you really know your stuff. Is a 3.7 to 3.75 GPA enough for, I think you're saying recruiting for IB? Yes, Connor, that's not going to hold you back. I think that's fine. If you're at a non-target school, it's still going to be an uphill battle. It doesn't matter what your GPA is, whether it's a 3.9 or a 3.5. It's going to be, again, who you know. So, please don't worry so much about your GPA. Yeah, keep your GPA up high. You don't want to be below like a 3.3 from a non-target. It just makes it even harder. I've seen people with like a 2.8 break in. So from non-targets. So it can be happening, but that's like super, super crazy exception. And usually from people who are super well-spoken and incredible at connecting with people. So the higher your GPA, the easier it's going to be to get on the phone with people. And you're going to get ghosted a lot less, and you're going to get a much higher conversion rate. So yeah, keep it up high, but that's plenty high. That's not going to hold you back. What's going to hold you back is probably just being afraid to like go crazy and reach out to people. I think, yeah, even from Boston College. Yep. Yeah. When you say, is it enough? So like a lot of people ask us like, what are my chances? Is it enough? Your chances to get a 3.7 from Boston College getting into banking is still not good. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not like, you're not getting like a ton of on-campus recruiting. You're not getting like, I know you have a school, a Carroll school, but it's not like you're getting what people at MIT or Harvard are getting, right? In terms of like on-campus recruiting, it's just facts. So like, what I would say is, you can look at the university database on the company database in Wall Street Oasis. There's actually a university tab under the investment banking industry report, which shows kind of what banks tend to recruit from Boston College. But I mean, you should kind of know that already if you're talking to alums anyways. And you got to try to figure out like who you should be targeting, what banks are kind of more likely to give you an interview. But either way, like that shouldn't stop you from actually applying to all of them and trying to network with people. Looks like I lost my connection to LinkedIn. I'm kind of reconnecting it right now. Yeah, I put the company database. Here's a link to the company database, wallstreetresearch.com/company. You can go in there, and there's specific interview insights at actual interview questions by company, by division, by everything. But there's also there's industry reports as well. Amir, can you send a link to the industry reports? It's under resources. I'll post that here as well. And that has there's a tab in there called universities that gives a lot of school specific data on where firms are recruiting. We have that for private equity, hedge funds, and consulting as well. And this is all based on user submitted data over the past decade. So you get kind of an idea of trends of where firms tend to hire, what schools are they interviewing at. So yeah, I wouldn't let the school that you're at deter you from trying. It's just, you have to have realistic expectations. Like even with the 3.7, you're still going to have to do a lot of legwork to just get the interviews in the first place. So it's hard to think that, because BC is a great school. So it's one of those things where it's like, how could this be so hard? Hey, Benjamin, if profile is not on target, would a master's from Europe help getting into investment banking? If you want to work in Europe, probably. Yeah, LSC for sure. Yeah, these all have on-campus recruiting, strong pipelines into banking, so like I would absolutely say, yeah, that would help, because you probably are going to be, again, that on-campus recruiting, that pipeline right there. But again, it's not going to guys, even at the top business schools in the world, it gives you a shot. It doesn't guarantee you a seat, right? So all it's doing is dramatically increasing your odds of getting interviews. And then it's really up to you. You still have to be ready in the interview. You still have to actually speak well. You still have to network well and speak with people and make them want to work with you. Not just your technicals, but your answers to why you want to work in this industry, and how you approach that really matters. And the delivery of how you say it. It's not just okay, here's the right answer. Let me just spout this back. Okay, I read it in an interview guide and I'm going to spout it back. And that's why we had the mentor service. So we had the investment banking interview course, but it's not enough to just go study, even 1,000 questions. It's not enough. You actually have to practice delivering them. And so I think we always say do a bunch of mock interviews with your friends. And then when you're ready for the real thing, when you have a real interview, hire a mentor, spend the $30, $40 to make sure that they're telling you exactly what answers are weak. When you think they're strong, it's funny because when I was interviewing in undergrad, I was always when you start, you think you're so good, and you have no idea how much better you can be by your 20th or 30th interview. I mean, just think of anything you've done in your life, the first 3 to 4 or 5 times, and then think of the 30th or 40th time. So whether it's a sport, whatever it is, playing an instrument, you just get so much better, especially in those first 10 to 15 instances of trying something. You're just going to get so much better across that. So I think it's really important. DJ Bad Debt Expenses. How do we apply? From monkey to millions. That's hilarious. Yeah, I think you just shoot me an email, patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. Shoot me your CV. Tell me, just a short explanation of why you want to be on the show, and I'll see if it's a good fit. For people who don't know, Monkey to Millions is my personal kind of mentee network where I help mentor a small group, basically of kids trying to break into usually investment banking, private equity sometimes, and get them access to everything that Wall Street Oasis has to offer, have personal mentor sessions with them, make sure they're on track. We're actually in the process of potentially developing something bigger. I don't want to announce it right now, but in about probably 4 to 6 weeks, we'll have a bigger announcement for everybody here. Doing something similar to Monkey to Millions, but in a more streamlined way so we can help more kids from all walks of life kind of have a good shot at breaking in. So that's coming down the pipe, but hopefully it's not something where I have to turn so many kids away. It's something where we can deliver an awesome program and experience to help more people break in that are willing to kind of put in the work to get there. So Connor asked, would you suggest shadowing various roles at wealth management or being an unpaid intern for a couple weeks trying to learn different professionals in finance or running a business? I found it tough to get much interest for someone my age to get into some finance related roles this summer, even for a little. Do anything you can, Connor. All of the above. Anything you can get on your CV is key. The more, and then even if you're not doing like the analysis, like just having something to fill your resume with on a freshman summer is helpful. So all of the above. I think those are all great ideas. Wealth management kind of is like the stereotypical it's kind of the stereotypical like example of like what people do freshman summer. But yeah, I think you could do that. I think you're going to have, you're not going to get a lot of responses as a freshman. I wouldn't, in your outreach emails that you should be keeping really short, I wouldn't be even saying that you're a freshman. I'd say, be like, I'm currently attending blah, 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 Boston College, da, da, da. Saying you're a freshman immediately like makes them be like, oh, whatever, I'll talk to him next year. So try to kind of like hide that fact a little bit up front to try and get a higher response rate, get more people on the phone, and potentially get a unpaid spot if you can. Swing it, sleeping on some couches or whatever you have to do to get that experience. Because again, the experience is worth so much more than whatever shit pay they're going to pay you anyways. Sorry for the language. So the experience is worth much more because it's just going to make your life so much easier sophomore and junior and senior year. So think of it that way. I think we'll end on that. Thanks everybody for joining the stream. 51 minutes, pretty good run. Yeah, if there's any questions from this, we'll try to get to them in the chats across all the platforms. But thanks again for joining, and I'll be here again next Wednesday. Oh no, I won't be here next Wednesday. The Wednesday after, I'll be here. I'm on vacation next Wednesday. Well, I'll probably be in Disneyland. Talk soon, everybody. Bye.